Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm going to be showing you how to install Kali Linux on your system. So this is going to be a tutorial on how to install it on Windows, as it's the most popular operating system. But the steps for installing it on Mac, if you use macOS, will be very similar. So what is Kali Linux? Kali Linux is a distribution of Linux which is designed for and by cybersecurity professionals and ethical hackers. Essentially, it's like the hacker's toolbox. So it comes with a number of tools already pre-installed into it and ready to go for assessments and doing anything to do with ethical hacking. So I'm going to be showing you how to install this on your host system without having to format your system and just install Kali as your main operating system. So we are going to be installing this as a virtual machine so that whenever we want to run it, we can just start up the virtual machine and stop it whenever we're done. So it's a lot easier, and this is how this will be run in the professional industry as well. So let's get started. So first we're going to need to install a virtual machine bit of software called VirtualBox. So if you just open your browser and then just simply Google VirtualBox. Now we're looking for Oracle VM VirtualBox. This is a free bit of software which allows you to run virtual machines, and it's my preferred one because you don't have to pay for it and it allows you to use multiple virtual machines at once. Whereas there are other ones such as VMware where they have certain restrictions in place which make it a little bit annoying if you're not working with a business license. So let's download this. So we just click the download button. And depending on what system you're using, once again, I'm assuming you are on Windows like the majority of people on the internet, but you can also get this for macOS and Linux. And yes, the steps will be very similar. Just follow the instructions if you are using macOS or a version of Linux. So we want the Windows host version, so we'll click that. And that will start our download. Okay, let's open this up and let's install it by double-clicking. Now allow that to make changes. Now if you're used to installers, then this is very simple. We just click next and just make sure the settings are correct. So next. So a lot of these settings will be fine just out of the box. So ensure that these are all set as they are and choose where you'd like to place it. If you want to place it on a different drive, then simply click browse and put it somewhere else. But we'll just stick it on our default C drive. Now, virtual machines usually emulate certain network interfaces to allow them to work as they do. So this will allow it to talk to other virtual machines and access the internet. So this is going to install a virtual network interface. So we want to click yes. And this is just prompting us to install missing dependencies for the software. So yes. Install. Now this will do its work and it will install all the files we need. It will probably ask you for permission to install certain parts of it, and then it should be ready to go. Okay, so that is finished, and we'll make sure that is checked, and this will start a VirtualBox for us when we finish. Just minimize my browser. Okay, so this is VirtualBox. This allows us to manage our virtual machines and to start and stop them and configure them depending on how we need them. So that's ready to go. What we need next is we need to get the Kali Linux virtual machine image, and then we will need to put that into VirtualBox. So next we'll go back to our browser and we will search Kali Linux. And then we'll click download get Kali. Now, you can see here you can get images, but you can also get specific images for virtual machines. So you can see here VMware and VirtualBox pre-built images. So this is what we want. We're using VirtualBox. These are usually pre-packaged and ready to go. So we want the VirtualBox one, which is here. So we will click this to download it. It's asking for which version you'd like, 64-bit or 32-bit. Make sure that 64-bit is enabled. You'll probably not need to use 32-bit software except for very specific applications. It's more of an old school legacy thing. So 64-bit and download VirtualBox, or the image for it anyway. Now, with the magic of video editing, I will resume once it is finished downloading. Okay, that has now finished downloading. So we now have a .7-zip file. So we'll open that folder. Okay, so this comes in a .7z file. This is the 7-zip, so we'll just need to get a bit of software so that we can unzip this. So we will just search 7-zip. Then we download it and we will install that. You can get other bits of software which can extract these types of files, but yeah, we'll just use the original 7-zip. So we'll install that, and that is installed. Okay, so now we will open up 7-zip and we'll extract our file. So wow, this is old, I haven't used this in quite a while. So C users will go to our downloads folder and we want our 7-zip file. So there it is there, extract. And it's going to extract into this folder here, and OK. This will probably take a little while because it's a fairly large file. So yeah, there we go. That's extracting it for us. And there we go, that is done. We can get rid of 7-zip now. Okay, so this is the folder which was just extracted. So this is our Kali Linux image. So go into that, and these are the two virtual machine files which we will look for with VirtualBox. So let's get rid of our browser, we don't need that anymore, and we will open up VirtualBox. So if you accidentally close that, you should have an icon for VirtualBox now, so just double click on that to start it up again. Okay, so we will now need to import this Kali Linux image into VirtualBox. So what we do is add, and then it's looking for these files. We navigate to downloads, and there's our VirtualBox machine. And that has added a little tab here for our Kali Linux virtual machine. So these are all the settings which we have here, and virtual machines will usually have a little description of them, which usually tell you how to use them and often have default usernames and passwords for them. You can see here for Kali Linux, the default username and password is Kali and Kali. Now, if you work in cybersecurity, you should know that default usernames and passwords is a very bad thing, so once we get this started, we'll need to change that. But more on that later. First of all, we will have to change the settings to make sure that this is running how we want it. So since it's a virtual machine, we need to tell VirtualBox how much of our own computer's resources that we want it to use. So you can configure how much CPU power you want to give it and how much RAM. So I'll just click through like the settings you can configure. So you can see here it's got like general information about the image. A lot of this was set by default by the people at Kali in that VirtualBox image that they made for us. Now advanced, you want to make sure that bidirectional clipboard and drag and drop is enabled, especially the clipboard. This allows you to copy and paste between your virtual machine and your host machine, so between Windows and the Kali Linux virtual machine. That is very useful. I cannot highlight that enough. There's the description, and it allows you to edit that. And you have disk encryption as well. We don't need that, we can ignore that. Up next, system. So this is what configures how much RAM VirtualBox is allowed to give this Kali Linux virtual machine. Now obviously your host machine only has so much RAM available. You can see this is my system here, and you can see I've got roughly around 32 gigabytes of RAM which I can assign it. Now for Kali Linux and many Linux distributions, they're not resource intensive, so 2 gigabytes of RAM should be fine. Next, we'll click over to the processor, and right now it is going to be given 2 processor cores from our host system, and there's no execution cap on the speed. So a lot of these settings are fine as they are. Next, acceleration. Now, we'll just leave these as default. There are certain settings you can set for acceleration, which the little quirks of virtual machines. Usually you have to disable hardware acceleration because it can cause problems, but we'll get to that later. So yeah, this looks good so far. We'll go to display now. So this is the setting I was talking about. So hardware 3D acceleration, leave that disabled. Usually in a machine you want to have hardware acceleration enabled because it enables better performance. But on virtual machines, it can cause issues and compatibility bugs and things, so leave that disabled. Now, video memory and the other settings, just leave them as they are. Remote display, leave that as it is. Recording, you can use that for things later if you really need, but leave it as it is. Storage. So we can see here, it has its own drive where it has used 13 gigabytes, and it has a virtual size of 80. You can change that if you want, but for now it is good as it is. Audio, leave that as it is. It's default, it's fine. Network. Now, this is an important one because if you don't set network properly, it won't be able to connect to the internet or other virtual machines that you want it to connect to. So we have essentially 4 different adapters. So this is kind of like on your real life PC where you have a port for Ethernet and you have a Wi-Fi adapters. Each of those is its own adapter. So you can enable or disable these. So you can see here adapter 2, 3 and 4 are disabled. And we only need the one adapter. So adapter 1 is enabled and is attached to NAT. So what NAT is it's called Network Address Translation. And it's a fancy way of saying, I want to share my PC's internet connection. It's more technical in how it works, but for now, we'll just keep things simple. So ensure that that is set to NAT so our Kali Linux can hook up to the internet and download things and retrieve what we need. There are advanced settings here as well. We don't need to change them. So that's good. Serial ports. We do not need to mess with serial ports. That's for other applications, depending on what you're trying to do. USB. Now, USB controller, you want to make sure that this is set to 1.1. If you use 2.0 and 3, it can sometimes cause issues. So default settings, that is fine. Shared folders. This is a useful thing to have if you want to transfer files between your host machine and your Kali Linux box. So if you're working on exploits in your host machine, or you have software or files, for example, or emails and things with details which you want to transfer between machines, then it's very useful to have a shared machine, shared folder. So we're going to share our downloads folder. So what I'm going to do, I am going to share this downloads folder. So this is my host machine's downloads folder. You can set it to whatever you want, and I'm going to bracket this as shared and set that to auto mount. Make sure read only is unchecked so that you can write into this, and we shall mount it at /mount/ we'll call this share 1. Very imaginative. And for some reason that's not working. Why is that not working? There we go, it didn't like that. So yeah, that's something I learned today. Yeah, just call it share 1. Yeah, it didn't like the parentheses, bracket symbols in the name. That was my bad, that's me being silly. So yeah, share 1, auto mount. So that'll be on our Linux system. If you don't understand why I've put /mnt /share 1, it's a Linux thing, it's just where the folder's going to be in Kali Linux. So we'll set that. User interface, just leave that default as it is and click OK. Okay, so that should be our virtual machine ready to go. So I'm just going to minimize my downloads. Now let's get it started. So to start the virtual machine, you just make sure this is selected on the left and you click Start. So running a virtual machine, it's just like running your own little program, and it runs in its own window alongside your guest operating system. And Kali's going to boot itself, like just there you saw a little options menu where you can select little settings and things. I'm going to get rid of that little tab by pressing that as well. And here we have Kali Linux booted up. So I'm going to maximize this screen so that you can see this a bit better. Okay. So this is our virtual machine, this is Kali Linux, and it's asking for a username and password to log on. Now, by default, out the box, if you remember from both the website where we downloaded Kali from and the description of the virtual machine in VirtualBox, the default username and password is Kali, and the password is Kali. So we'll log in. And there we go, we are logged into Kali Linux now. Now, you may have noticed that for some reason the screen is a very small size, so we need to change that. So let's get onto that. So to resize the screen, we're going to go up here to View, and then we're going to go down to Virtual Screen 1, and right now you can see it's resized to 800 by 600. This is why it's so small. So we'll change that to 1920 by 1080, so we'll put it up to 1080p. And yeah, that's a little bit better for us. So yeah, now I'm just going to resize this screen, so there it just looks a little bit, it gets rid of all that wasted space. So here's Kali Linux for us. This is, if you've not seen this kind of operating system before, this is what Linux looks like. So it's very similar. If you've not used Linux before, don't be intimidated by it. Like it's just like using Windows. The first few times you use it, it's a little bit weird, but once you learn the quirks, it's quite simple to use. So now that we've got it installed and ready to go, we need to change the password, because this is connected to the internet, and being people that obviously want to be good at cybersecurity and ethical hacking, we don't want to be hacked ourselves. So what we'll do now is change the password. Now, what we'll do is we will use the command line, or the terminal, as it is commonly known, to do this. So, you see this icon up here which says Terminal Emulator? Just click that. And this is our terminal. So this is, it's just also called the command line, or if you've been using Windows, it's also called the command prompt, but that's the Windows-specific version of this sort of thing. Essentially, you type commands and it does things. That's it. So let's change this password. So all you need to type is PASSWD, password. Well, it's just a short way of saying password. Press enter, and this will prompt us for our current password. So, changing password for Kali. Current password. Current password is Kali. And press enter, and new password. So I'm going to put in my own password here, and then retype it, and enter, and now that has been changed. And that is Kali Linux more or less ready to go. So to double check that it is working properly, we're going to open up our web browser to make sure we can go to Google. So let's go to google.com. And there you have it. So our Kali Linux box is configured, the password has been changed, and it has internet access. So this is ready for the majority of our needs. Okay, one final thing that I wanted to go through is the shared folder that we set up. So our downloads folder from our Windows machine is shared with Kali Linux. So just to show you this, if you go over to here, to the file browser, file system, and then if you've not seen this before, this is Linux's file system. So you can see here a number of folders which you probably won't know what a lot of them do. Don't worry, I will have another video on that later. So if you remember, I put it in /MNT, which is short for mount. So here's MNT, double click on that, and you can see our very imaginatively named share1 folder. So this is the folder which is shared between Windows and Linux. So this is what's in our downloads folder. So you can see there's the kalilinux.7zip file, there's our VirtualBox installer, and we can share things back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just demonstrate this by I'm going to create let's create an empty file, and we'll name it, look, I shared something. There we go. And this is just an empty file. So we created that in Kali Linux. Now, I'm going to minimize my virtual machine and just go to my browser. My file browser, that is. Now we go into downloads, and you can see that, look, I shared something is now in our Windows downloads folder. So this is really useful for sharing files between Windows and Kali Linux. So it's definitely worth setting up that shared folder. Now, we can also share things from Windows to our Kali box. So just to show you, I will create a file with this. I will create a text document in Windows, and look, Windows shared something. So that was created in Windows. I'll minimize that, and we'll go back to Kali Linux. Now, this file browser won't refresh things in real time, so we'll just have to go out of mount and then back in, and there we go, it's refreshed it. And you can see here, look, Windows shared something. So yeah, you can create files in between the two operating systems, and yeah, it makes things a lot easier if you're downloading exploits or software or other things. So yeah, it's worth setting up these shared folders when you originally set up your Kali Linux virtual machines. Now, I will do other videos on more Kali Linux topics to do more in-depth things, but for now, you should be set up and ready to go. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has been useful.